Welcome to the Limitless Potential podcast, where together we will dive into the personal, business, and career-rich tips, techniques, stories, and experiences of some incredibly successful and inspirational people, each with their own perspectives and journeys, and each with golden nuggets of wisdom which might just change your life. I'm Tracy Stone, and I'm a master trainer in a number of career supercharging techniques, a transformational coach, international best-selling author, inspirational speaker, and a woman discovering and evolving my very own limitless potential day by day.
I went to yoga and one thing you're going to stand up at your stage.
Celebrate yourself.
Spiritual things for a very second I met her.
And so once a week, each of you take mindfulness and okay, I'm still here.
Now, I thought that message, and I see this happening many times again, which is, again, I see it in a positive way.
Welcome back to the Limitless Potential podcast. I'm delighted to welcome Charlene Ray, who joins us today from beautiful Whidbey Island, Washington, USA. Charlene is a licensed independent clinical social worker, practicing as a therapist, mentor, and workshop facilitator for 37 years. She also works for Forefront Suicide Prevention as a master training specialist. Charlene has studied mindful self-compassion, nature-based therapies, rites of passage, suicide prevention, grief and loss therapy, poetry therapy, therapeutic storytelling, and guided imagery. Wow. She blends all of the traditions and techniques with her intuitive work to create an individualized and very powerful experience for each client and program she facilitates. Charlene teaches mindfulness in schools and facilitates the Mindful Self-Compassion 8-week course for adults. She has also led programs for school districts on various mental health topics and is a frequent speaker at Snow Isle Library Issues That Matter events. She's an international best-selling author of 4 stories in compilation books published by Ignite. Charlene presented a 2020 TEDx talk on seeing grief in a new light. And she's here with us today to talk about her journey and how she taps into her own limitless potential. Welcome, Charlene, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tracy. I'm so thrilled to be here with you. Always a pleasure.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I am particularly excited to have you here with me today because we also have a shared journey together that we have published in the same books together. So both with the Ignite organization, and also you have kindly contributed your very personal experience with grief in the book that I wrote, which is Love Remains, a Guide Through Grief. So we have a wonderful shared journey as well. So thank you again for being here.
You're very welcome.
So let's get stuck in because there is so much juicy stuff in here to talk about. You have an incredible past, an incredible present, and amazing skills that you use in the work that you do. And I know that people are dying to hear about that. So Charlene, let's start maybe back at the beginning. Tell me a little bit, if you will, about your childhood. What was it like for you growing up? What is the young Charlene, and how did that grow her into the amazing woman today?
When you say that, I think of the very young me, the one that would build forts, blanket forts, and with books and deep imagination, and spend hours and hours in just inspired by both the books that I was reading and so the written word, and also making these forts out in nature, being inspired by being in my backyard in nature. It felt like it was a very I feel so honored and privileged to have had those times. And it was a really good foundation that led led to what I was then able to draw upon later when I needed it, some things that were really important. Because I feel like my limited potential is steeped in grief, which sounds funny to me when I say it in a way, but it's just grief became so much of my journey when my father died when I was 13. And the place that I turned to for solace and healing, the places were books and nature and my deep imagination. And it really led me through, got me through high school and into college, where I decided that I wanted to help other people who were on this path. Because at the time that my father died, there wasn't a lot of talking about grief, and there weren't a lot of tools and resources like there are now. And so I really wanted to be a part of that solution for other people who were experiencing it.
And I think that you're so right that there weren't a lot of tools. There wasn't a lot of help that people could get. So how have you tapped into that in your own personal journey?
In my personal journey, I think that what I realized when I was very young and my father's death happened, that there was no one to talk to about it, really, because everyone was either in grief in my family, or people just didn't know what to say or what to do, which is still very hard for people to know what to say or do when someone is in deep grief. But my personal journey was really to turn to nature and to spend time outdoors, to spend time really thinking about the bigness of nature and how I was going to get through it. And I remember hearing a voice when I was spending time outdoors that said to me, "You can do hard things." And a lot of people use that. I've heard that phrase quite a bit, that people say, "You can do hard things." And it was such a lifesaver for me, because in the moment I didn't believe I could do hard things. So I learned in that moment too the power of our thoughts and the power of mantras, words that we could say, because I began to say to myself, I can do hard things. This is the hardest thing, and I can get through it. And that was one thing that really, really helped me. And it's also when I discovered poetry, both writing poems and reading other poets' work, as another lifesaver for that time. I've brought all these things, of course, with me in my tool bag through the years to share with others, and so my clients can benefit from the things that I learned and the things that knowledge I've gained along the way.
I think that's beautiful. And I really agree with you. I can resonate with what you're talking about the words. I think most of us dramatically underestimate the power that our words have on not just our feelings, but our belief systems and our experience of life. So
absolutely,
how have you used the power of those words? You've talked so beautifully there about using the poetry and learning those special phrases and mantras that give you the strength. You can do hard things. I think that's just so simple but beautiful, because often when grief hits us, we feel broken and we feel, I can't do this.
Yes, that's so true. And I think it's also okay to have the feelings. I really want to make sure everyone realizes that feeling of I can't do this is natural, right? It's a natural part of grief. And somewhere along the way, and I think this is why finding a guide, whether it's a book or a person or a support group, is so helpful in grief. We're not really meant to grieve alone. So if you find some type of a guide, that's where you can sometimes get the get the other words that you can hang on to, even if you don't believe them at first, like I can do hard things, or even acknowledging your feelings in a self-compassionate way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so many people don't even know that kind of help and support is out there and is available to them. So, Charlene, you've talked before about being a grief wisdom guide. Can you explain for us what that means?
Yes. Well, it comes from my business name is Soul Wisdom Guidance. And it's really and so grief wisdom, being a grief wisdom guide is a part of that. But I work with other things besides grief. So it's all connected to being in touch with your soul and the wisdom that you already have within you to travel the territory of grief or whatever the challenge is that you're facing. So my job as a guide is to walk alongside the person and as a companion, and to help them find their own wisdom and bring it forward.
What would you say to people when they say wisdom? I don't have wisdom. I don't understand these things. I'm not a wise person. When people doubt themselves like that, what would you say to them?
Well, that happens frequently, Tracy. So I get lots of practice with that one, because people don't often don't see it at first. And so that's what I say, is that my belief is that we all have wisdom within us. We all already have what we need to know, but we may just not believe it yet, know how to access it. And, so I really invite people to trust me on the journey that we will find it together. And often I begin by asking them about situations or things that they've done where they've experienced a lot of flow, that kind of experience where you're doing something and time is going by and you don't even realize it. But you're just so into what you're doing. Or when you have a moment where you just know something to be true. So I try to help them look for examples, because that's wisdom. Both of those situations are accessing that wise self, that wisdom that lives within you. And sometimes those examples are really helpful to people, because then they can think, oh, yes, I that's wisdom. I just didn't even know that that's what it was. And so we begin to start with those examples. And then I do a lot of reflecting for people of when they are accessing that wise place within them, so that they can see it. Sometimes that helps to just validate, there it is, that came from you, that's within you. And I think one of my gifts that I've had since childhood is to be able to see the potential within a person that I'm sitting with. So when they can't see it, I'm looking right at that potential. And I feel like that is my work as a guide, is to help bring that forward.
Oh, that's so important. And it's at that low point in people's lives that they can't see it for themselves. They don't feel it, they don't see it. So to have somebody who can see it and can bring them on that journey to get back to that and gain strength from it is so powerful. And I think the wisdom thing comes out so much from all of the aspects that you work in. So as you said, you don't only deal in grief. Tell us a little bit more about those other areas that you work in, because I think that they all tie together in wisdom.
Yes, well, I work a lot with particularly women, but all people in life transitions quite a bit. So people who are I love working with young people who are moving from their secondary school or high school or college, university to life, and trying to kind of figure out what's their purpose, why are they here, what wisdom do they have to offer the world. And so that's one of my favorite transitions that I work with. But I also help people who are thinking about like mid-career changes, or suddenly discovering that they've had a lot of limiting beliefs and they want to live beyond those so that they can start a business, or move to another country, or buy a home, or something that's bigger than they've ever been before. So that's another piece. And then I also love working with people at the end of life. So people who are thinking about, what is my legacy? What do I want to leave behind? And spending a lot of time in reflection and preparing something to offer as a final chapter of their life. So all of those life transitions, and I think that it's all soul work. That's the common thread. It's all that soul wisdom work, accessing what is it that the soul wants, and what are the gifts of the soul.
Beautiful.
I also work with anxiety and depression and trauma, and some of the challenges that people are facing.
And how did you find this career path, Charlene? I know you've talked about how losing your dad at such a young age, and that has to have been so hard. I know a lot of people have, but knowing that a lot of people have lost people important to them doesn't really help the individual who has lost someone. How did that experience bring you into this career, do you think? How did that shape you?
Well, I think that the foundation of this career actually happened before that, because even as a younger child, I was the kind of person that people would come to talk about their troubles, and I would listen. I was a good listener, and then try to help them figure it out. So I had the foundation of that. And then I think that when my father died, that kind of sealed the deal for me, and that this was going to be the profession that I would particularly want to work with other young people in grief. But so it started very, very early, and I just followed it right on through. That's why I've been doing it for 37 years.
Yes. But it is so amazing that a lot of people don't often realize that they find their purpose in life at a very young age. They just don't realize that they're framing it as a purpose in life. But you can identify back to how being that friend that people called on at such a young age, you knew that there was something special about that. Something that not only would be your career, but a purpose in your life.
Yes, absolutely. And I also knew from a very young age, I wasn't going to be a traditional therapist, so to speak. I knew I needed to go to school to get the foundation of work, of the classes and the theories and therapies. But I knew that I would have other ways of looking at the work, because I could so often, just maybe it was a strong intuition. Like I knew things, that when I would be talking with someone, or I knew intuitively to tell them to close their eyes and imagine, a place in nature, and find a safe place. There were certain things that I knew, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. I wonder if there's a way of doing the work this way. It took a while to find that, because what came naturally to me, people weren't talking about as much or doing when I was young, and even in school, it was the path was traditional. But as soon as I got out of college, I found teachers who they made their way into my life, who had more experience in deep imagery and nature-based work, and trusting your intuition and guides, you know. So then I was able to create what I feel is a very non-traditional experience of therapy or counseling.
So it's been unfolding, but you have been consciously ensuring that it unfolds the direction that feels right for you. That you knew you didn't want it to be the traditional method. Yes, I need to learn a lot of that, but you also had this strong sense, this strong feeling of knowing what direction you needed to go in that felt right, that you can contribute the most with.
Yes, that's true. And I think also that to say that, I really want, for people to think about that wasn't necessarily an easy path. And that there are things that come up against, that you come up against that are challenges to it. People who tell you you can't do it that way, or that you'll never get any clients, or you won't make any money. And it's really, for me, sometimes I would believe those messages and go through a period of doubts. And then I would realize, like staying true to my own compass, my inner compass, right? And no, I have to stay, I can manifest what I believe in. I have to stay true to the course here.
And you're right in everything that you say, that it's not going to be ever a straight road. It's not an easy ride, whatever you choose really in life. So would you share with us, Charlene, what are some of the greatest challenges that you have had to overcome in your life, and how have you overcome them, and how have they added to the color of your life and your journey?
Yeah, I think, well, my challenges when I think about that, I think that financially there's been some challenge, just in the beginning, choosing a career that wasn't financially rewarded by our world necessarily, and needing to find ways to kind of persevere and really believe that I could make a living, like not just a surviving living, but a thriving living doing this work. So, I feel like that has caused a lot of stress that I've had to overcome. But really, again, I feel like when I come back to this is what I'm here to do, and trusting that that is true, that's what really helped me through that time. I think it got particularly challenging. I had a divorce at one point, and so was single parenting and on my own, and having to continue to find my way. And probably the biggest challenge, though, as I'm talking to you, Tracy, is really one of the biggest ones is the internal challenge of believing in myself and letting go of some stories that kind of kept me small. I think about when I was working for more like a regular job with the county, and I wanted so much to break away to my own business, my own way of doing things. And the fear of not, of thinking I won't make any money, and I wasn't really being well paid even in the job, but it was consistent, right? The paycheck came every 2 weeks and it was consistent. But so it really kept me longer than I would have liked to say in that place. But I really, at one point, it was like I couldn't not break away, and when I did, it was such a big deal, but it was such an amazing feeling to say, I'm choosing myself in this path. And it was so rewarded. I feel like it was rewarded financially, but also in so many other ways. And so that is something that I think a lot of people come up against, those types of barriers. And I'm just like, believe in yourself and break through, because I feel like you can manifest anything if you really believe in it.
So how would you advise somebody to begin that journey of believing in themselves? So if they're in a similar situation that they know they're doing something that doesn't quite feel right, may not be bad, but it doesn't quite feel right. You know you want something more, something different, but the fear is there about breaking that link, and it's an internal thing, isn't it? How do you suggest to them, whatever the path is that they're on, to what are the techniques or the tools or the skills or the words that give someone that confidence in themselves to trust themselves and believe in themselves and to be brave?
Yes, words are very powerful, I think. Affirmations and words. I mean, one of the things I did was I wrote many of them on little post-it note type papers and stuck them up everywhere so I could read them, every day, telling myself. And again, one of them said, "You can do hard things."
Yeah.
And I would say, and there was others were more like, is this useful in your life? Some of them were just reminders of what I wanted in my life. So I think the words can be very powerful, and it's going to be very individual, finding the ones that really speak to you. And so that's one thing that I did. I think I also found a guide myself. I saw a coach, it was a counselor and a coach who believed in me and what I wanted to do. And that was really helpful to have reflected back to me, um, the power of what I was saying. And that's helpful. And also I went out to my greatest guide ever, which is nature, quite frequently, and would just sit with a tree and do some journaling. So journaling was another technique that I would write out, what does my ideal life look like? Or I would just listen to the tree, listen to other elements of nature for wisdom. What is it that I want to manifest? Or what should I know? What do I need to know right now? And I would also, there were so many things that I did and continue to do. These are tools that I continue to use even when anytime when I need some guidance. Poetry, I would pick up a book of poems and randomly open it and read, like I would say 3 lines, give me 3 lines. And I would read 3 lines. And it was like magic how they always just spoke to me. And sometimes I'd take the 3 lines and then I'd do some writing about those three lines, or maybe one of them would jump off, and I would put it on a post-it and have it on my computer or next to me on my desk to look at for the day. So and I did something every day. I feel like also it's like really important to kind of give the universe the message by being consistent and doing things every day that can support you and bring you forward.
I think that's so important and so vital for everybody. It's actually a big core belief of mine as well. And I'm hearing it in everything that you're talking about. You're a person of action. And one of the most important habits of successful people is that they take action every single day in the direction of their dreams, their goals, their objectives. And it doesn't have to be much. It might be a minute, 5 minutes, it might be an hour, it might be the whole day. But there's this important component in your life of taking action. And there's a lot of people that will feel their life is not what they want it to be, but they're maybe sitting down every day and spending the day watching Netflix, or not doing something positive for themselves. Nothing wrong with watching a bit of Netflix. I like a good program on TV. But taking action every day in the direction of the thing that you want is so vital, isn't it?
It is. And and you're reminding me as you were talking, I was thinking about vision boards too. At the time I used a vision board, where you take images of things that you want in your life and you put them on make a collage with them, really. and then put it somewhere where you can look at it and remind you. And I would usually do images and words. And I just find them to be so helpful, because before too long I would look and I would, that's happened, or I've been to that place, and I just feel like the power of the visual, especially for people who are more visual, can be really amazing to put images to what you're wanting to achieve.
For sure. It gives clarity. It helps to really frame it visually. And I think a lot of what you're talking about, for those who use the term, is talking very much about the law of attraction. But I think personally that the law of attraction is greatly misunderstood by a lot of people. People tend to think, I just have to want it. And as long as I want it, it's going to happen. No, the law of attraction is about wanting it and then taking action every single day. It's moving you step by step, day by day, closer to that goal. So the wanting has to be balanced also by action. And I think that's what's often missing for people when they think of the law of attraction. But you are a perfect example for people to hear all of these incredible tips, which are not even there as you trying to give tips. It's just how you've lived your life. It's you do the stuff, you do things. And you're taking the post-it notes, you're writing the words down, you're putting them there, you're using them, you're doing the vision board, you're taking action all the time. And that's often the key differentiator between people who are moving towards what they want and the people who are maybe sitting and thinking, well, I want something different, but I don't know how to get there, and it's not happening for me.
Very true. And I do make a practice of some of these things every day. I especially, even mindfulness, just, breathing practice or self-compassion practice, bringing myself into the moment. I think that part of the reason I love to teach mindfulness and mindful self-compassion is that it reinforces what I, for myself as well. I get to do it every day. I love the mindfulness with children because I'm remembering, I think it's one thing that, and it helped me along my path too, was I was in that process of trying to leave that job, but started to teach some mindfulness for children in the schools. And I remember a particular 5-year-old who told me that, he was sitting there breathing, and he said, breathing is the best thing. And he said, if we just breathe like this, we can do anything. And then, so it was such an amazing thing. And then that same day, I went to the 4th grade, which is about like 9-year-olds. And we were doing, they wanted to do superheroes do mindfulness? They asked that question. And so we made up mindfulness exercises that a superhero could do. And I'll never forget the one girl who, she just like raised her hand in the air and she said, I am a master manifester. And I said, oh, I'm going to use that one. And I did every day. After that, I said, I put it on a Post-it. I said it. I'm a master manifester. And then I gave my notice to that job. So, and so that I could go off on my own. And I thought, yeah, I am a master manifester. And how wonderful for children to begin to realize that they are at such a young age. So that really was a really an exciting moment.
That's incredible. I love that so much. Love that. And so vital, the work you're doing with the young children, because when we grow up with pain and baggage and hurt and trauma, it turns us into adults that have magnified that pain and hurt and baggage and trauma. So if we can help children at a young age to step into their confidence, their self-love, everything is possible for them. You are creating limitless potential for a whole array of children. That must feel amazing.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's one of the best things. I love all the things that I get to do in my work, but being with being with the children, because they're so, I mean, even when they're going through hard things, I mean, both of those children that I gave the examples of have pretty hard lives at home right
Mm.
now. But they're so hungry for this other way of looking at the world and realizing, they just get it so quickly. They just get it. So I just feel like and then they say really delightful things as a result of it, because they're just saying what's fresh on their mind and with no filter. And then I just hope that they continue to use it. I think that I have come met children that I have worked with a few years after, and they have said they've I've had them point to me in the grocery store and say, "Oh, there's the mindfulness lady," and then they'll say, "I still do that breath that you taught me," which is so lovely, because I feel like if they can learn how to recognize their feelings and manage distress with some mindfulness and some other tools, oh, that goes such a long way into how they will be as they grow up.
Absolutely.
And it's not too late to learn it too. If you haven't learned it as a child, I feel like some of these techniques are really great for all ages. And I also feel like one thing that's really important to me is that it's not boring, that we bring in a certain amount of playfulness and fun with learning these skills that we can learn, because it just makes it, I mean, we remember it more, and it just makes it so much more enjoyable. And so I think that maybe doesn't come right away with things like grief, but even at some point people find their laughter in grief. It's there find moments, and often that comes through a memory, of
Yes.
a person or something like that. But I think making these tools and things that you do, the practices you do every day, have a bit of playfulness is always a good idea.
I think it's a wonderful way to approach it. And that playfulness, that making it fun as well, even when you're going through a traumatic situation, whether it's your relationship, your home life, your job, whatever the situation is, making it a little bit more fun and enjoyable actually makes you feel more receptive to feeling differently, to thinking differently, to doing differently, and empowering yourself differently. When you can shift the energy that you're feeling into something that's a little lighter and a little bit more enjoyable, you do suddenly start to believe that different things are possible, don't you?
I agree. It's opening. It just really opens you to what's
Yeah.
possible.
So, Charlene, when you think back on your journey, what would you say would be a key change in your personality, or what aspect of your personality do you think has changed the most, or has it
I
stayed stable?
Well, I think one thing that comes to mind about that is how I have learned to be with the inner critic, with the self-critical voice that I had pretty strongly, and alongside these other more playful and fun parts of myself, there has been a perfectionist critic, um, especially in my early 20s, to do things and to do them perfectly, and to do them meant like that I would be loved, or meant that I would that I was okay. I made it mean certain things, but I was very harsh on myself in those days. And so I think learning self-compassion and learning that my critic was also not, wasn't there to really, the goal wasn't to hurt me, even though it was hurtful, what my critic was saying. But the goal was really to either protect me or to help me to be the best I could be, but going about it, the wrong way. So self-compassion really helped with that, because I was able to be with that part of myself in a compassionate and kind way and bring more kindness to myself. And I think that's been something really valuable. And I know now that it works because my critic is much less harsh when it does come up.
That's really life-changing, being able to do that. Charlene, could I tempt you into sharing with us, with the listeners, a technique or an approach that helps them to do that? How would you advise them to kind of manage that inner critic? What can they actually do? If we're going to talk today about things being doing things as well, being the person of action.
Yes. Well, one of the simplest things I do is a version of something they call in mindful self-compassion a self-compassion break, which is a very short thing that you can do at any time. And it brings in the three elements of mindful self-compassion, which are mindfulness, common humanity, that we're not alone in this, and then kindness. And so the way in which you might do it is if you hear, like if I heard my critic, if I made a mistake or did something, and I hear my critic say, "Oh, that was dumb," or or "You're not very good at that." What I will do is I usually put my hand on my heart as a way of offering myself compassion. And I acknowledge, so this is the mindfulness part. I acknowledge that hurts. I'll just say, "Oh, that's a hurtful thing to say." So I just acknowledge that piece. And then the common humanity is I usually tell myself, anyone who would hear that would feel the same way, that that's hurtful, whether you said that to themselves or to another, and I sometimes even ask myself, would you say that to your child or your friend, and then I like, no. And then I think, oh, what's a kinder thing I could say to myself? And then I could say, well, I see that maybe I could do that differently, that didn't go the way that I wanted it to go, and I could do it a little differently the next time. But I'm okay. I'm still a good person. And so I bring myself that kindness. So that's a very quick, like just it's acknowledging the feelings. It's kind of feeling like either that anyone could feel this way, so you're not alone, and then also sometimes bringing that element of how would I treat a friend, and then offering myself kindness. And you can do it like we just did it in a minute or two there, and you could do it very quickly and anywhere. You'd be in the middle of the store or in your office or at home. And so I find that to be helpful, and I do that on a regular basis. And sometimes it's just the hand on the heart is enough. If I've heard myself say something, and then I just put my hand on my heart and take a couple deep breaths. And I'm like, oh yeah. Now the hand on the heart has become a signal to me to be kind, to pause and be kind. And other people may find it's, they put their hands together. They can do another type of soothing touch besides the hand on the heart that's more helpful to them. You just have to find what works for you. But when you do, then that can be a signal to yourself to pause.
That's amazing.
It's
going to help so many people, and I totally agree with that. I talk also to my clients in the same way, that I encourage people to talk to themselves the way they would to someone they love and care about and respect. And very often the things that we say to ourselves, I'm stupid, I'm terrible, I'm useless, I can't do it, I'll never find love, or I'll never do this, or I'll never do that, or I'll never have something. Would you talk to the person you love the most in the same way? No, you would never talk to them that way. So why would you talk to yourself that way? So I love these techniques that you're sharing with us. It's a beautiful experience. And moving from that then into what's coming up for you, Charlene, you're working in so many beautiful wisdom areas and uplifting so many people's experience of their own life. What's coming next for you? What are maybe one or two of your own goals and objectives that you are working on stepping into?
Well, I would love to do more speaking. So that's one of my goals, is to be able to talk to groups of people about um, grief wisdom and soul wisdom. And so I'm always looking for opportunities to do that. I have a couple opportunities coming up in the fall with organizations to do that. And then also getting back to working on my book. I was working on it for a while and then took a pause for some other things. And I have a book that I'm writing based on grief wisdom and want to get back to that. So that may be what the fall and winter are going to be about.
Beautiful. And we can't wait for that. Do you have a name for it yet? Or is that to come?
It's to come still. I've been playing around with different names, but the right one, the catchy, playful one, hasn't come yet.
It will find its way.
It will. Yes,
because
it will.
you will make it happen.
I'm a master manifester.
Exactly.
Right? Yes.
How wonderful that you got, while you were coaching a child, you got coached by the child.
Yes. Doesn't that happen frequently? Yes.
Yeah, but it's just such a perfect balance, isn't it? It's wonderful.
It is. It's wonderful.
I am a master manifester. And for a young child to come up with that is just so heartwarming, isn't it? Beautiful. Okay. So maybe as a final thing then, Charlene, a final question is, what book or books or program or film or anything else, what would you suggest that people should be tapping into? What do you think from your perspective?
Wow, that's a tough question. There's so many. There's so many. Well, I do feel like I think one book that is one that I keep going back to, and for me, I mean, it may not speak to everyone, but it's Peace is Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese monk. I feel like it's a really beautiful mindfulness, treasure, that book. So that's one that I read a very long time ago that got me on the journey to mindfulness, and I constantly recommend to others.
Beautiful.
And many grief books that are wonderful. Yours is a beautiful one.
Thank you
Remains.
so much.
And and I think that I also often recommend Megan Devine's it's okay to not be okay.
Yes.
And yeah, so many treasures out there.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And I know that was a final question, but here's a very final question, and it's about the beautiful background behind you. Tell people a little bit about that and why that is so important or connecting for you. I know why. Yes. I know the secret.
Yes. Well, this is something that we didn't even talk about, did we? It was my soul connection to Ireland. This is Ireland behind me. Most of my backgrounds on Zoom are Ireland because that's the way I get to be there without being there. And yes, I have a deep, deep connection with Ireland, and have in the past led some soul journeys in Ireland before COVID times, which was really beautiful, with some Irish guides that are my friends, that to the wells and sacred places of Ireland. And so that's something I may or may not get to do again. But I really I get there as often as I can. It's beautiful.
It certainly is.
Place for me.
And where can people find more about you? So if you do have more things going on in Ireland, or the book, or the work that you do, just mention for our listeners how they can find out more about you.
I think the best way would be my website, which is my name, charleneray.com. And that's a good place to get an overview of what I'm up to, and also contact me if you would like to chat with me.
Fantastic. Charlene, thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed our conversation here. Truly, truly love hearing the experiences that you've had. And just, I think I'm going to be smiling all for the rest of the day about that little child being a master manifester. It's just beautiful. But thank you for spending this time with us and for sharing your wisdom and your life journey. It's going to, I know, uplift many and give them incredible techniques that are so easy to implement, but move you towards the thing that you want to move towards.
Thank you, Tracy. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And I do want people to realize how simple it can be. Some of these things are so simple, but so powerful.
For sure.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. We've loved having you on. And thank you to all of our listeners, and wishing you all a wonderful day, and that you tap into your very own limitless potential with all these incredible tips and techniques that are free for you to just dive on into. So enjoy your limitless potential, and we'll see you next time.